Hello there. Happy Sunday. It's day 30 of the pandemic, at least by my count. And we're picking up back in book 2. We're going to start at around line 727. But really quickly, just a little bit of a recap from yesterday. I promised us an election when I picked yesterday up. And apparently, fittingly, elections, voting, and vote tabulation are much more efficient in hell than they are on earth. It took about 6 syllables at the end of the previous day's reading for the voting to happen and for the results to come in. So what we actually had yesterday was a moment where Satan asks for volunteers. They've all agreed that someone should go explore this supposed new realm and supposed new inhabitants of that realm that were created. And the goal, of course, is to disrupt all of God's good plans. So they ask for volunteers. Satan asks for volunteers, looks around, nobody's very keen on volunteering. And ultimately he says, you know what, I'll do it. You all hold down the fort. And it's funny, when I started yesterday's reading, I had no idea how applicable it would be to what we're doing right now. Or most of us, I suppose, are doing right now. Because the rest of yesterday's reading, well, not the rest, but a large portion of the rest of yesterday's reading focused on different pockets of activity that the remaining fallen angels undertook to use their time. Some of them went and explored. Some of them went and did athletic feats. Some of them trusted their strength working out all the time. Some of them went to more pastoral areas and sat and sang. And then eventually we see, and also the group of people who sit and think and ask questions. Not gonna lie, I felt a little bit indicted there. At any rate, eventually we see Satan fly up and try to begin the exploration. Yesterday, the end of yesterday's reading saw Satan meet up with a black blob that had quite an attitude. And we hear some verbal sparring before they begin to fight. They're broken up by that half woman, half monstrous entity that we heard described earlier in book 2. And it is her voice who we hear at the beginning of today's reading, book 2, line 726. So I'm going to read until the end of book 2, and that'll call it a day. "O Father, what intends thy hand," she cried, "against thy only Son? What fury, O Son, possesses thee to bend that mortal dart against thy Father's head? And knowest for whom? For him who sits above and laughs the while at thee ordained his drudge, to execute whate'er his wrath, which he calls justice, bids, his wrath which one day will destroy ye both." She spake, and at her words the hellish pest forbore. Then these to her Satan returned. "So strange thy outcry, and thy words so strange thou interposest, that my sudden hand prevented spares to tell thee yet by deeds what it intends. Till first I know of thee, what thing thou art, thus double formed, and why in this infernal vale first met thou call'st me Father, and that phantasm call'st my Son. I know thee not, nor ever saw till now sight more detestable than him and thee." To whom thus the portress of Hellgate replied, "Hast thou forgot me then? And do I seem now in thy eye so foul, once deemed so fair in heaven, when at the assembly and in sight of all the seraphim with thee combined in bold conspiracy against heaven's king, all on a sudden miserable pain surprised thee, dimmed thine eyes, and dizzy swum in darkness, while thy head flames thick and fast threw forth, till on the left side, opening wide, likest to thee in shape and countenance bright, then shining heavenly fair, a goddess armed out of thy head I sprung. Amazement seized all the host of heaven. Back they recoiled, afraid at first, and called me sin, and for a sign portentous held me. but familiar grown, I pleased, and with attractive graces won the most averse, thee chiefly, who full oft thyself in me thy perfect image viewing, becamest enamored. And such joy thou tookest with me in secret, that my womb conceived a growing burden. Meanwhile, war arose, and fields were fought in heaven, wherein remained, for what could else, to our almighty foe clear victory, to our part loss and rout through all the Empyrean. Down they fell, driven headlong from the pitch of heaven, down into the steep, and in the general fall I also, at which time this powerful key into my hand was given, with charge to keep these gates forever shut, which none can pass without my opening. Pensive here I sat alone, but long I sat not, till my womb, pregnant by thee, and now excessive, grown prodigious motion felt, and rueful throes. At last, this odious offspring whom thou seest, thine own begotten, breaking violent way, tore through my entrails, that with fear and pain distorted, all mine other shape thus grew transformed. But he, my inbred enemy, forth issued, brandishing his fatal dart, made to destroy. I fled, and cried out death. Hell trembled at the hideous name, and sighed from all her caves, and back resounded death. I fled, but he pursued, though more, it seems, inflamed with lust than rage, and swifter far, me overtook his mother all dismayed, and in embraces forcible and foul, engendering with me, of that rape begot these yelling monsters, that with ceaseless cry surround me, as thou sawest, hourly conceived and hourly born, with sorrow infinite to me. For when they list into the womb that bred them, they return, and howl and gnaw my bowels, their repast. Then bursting forth, afresh with conscious terrors vex me round. That rest or intermission none I find. Before mine eyes in opposition sits grim death, my son and foe, who sets them on, and me his parent would full soon devour for want of other prey, but that he knows his end with mine involved, and knows that I should prove a bitter morsel, and his bane, whatever that shall be. So fate pronounced. But thou, O Father, I forewarn thee, shun his deadly arrow, neither vainly hope to be invulnerable in those bright arms, though tempered heavily, for that mortal dent, save he who reigns above, can none resist. She finished, and the subtle fiend his lore soon learned, now milder, and thus answered smooth. Dear daughter, since thou claimest me for thy sire, and my fair son here showest me, the dear pledge of dalliance had with thee in heaven, and joys then sweet, now sad to mention, through dire change befallen us unforeseen, unthought of, know I come no enemy, but to set free from out this dark and dismal house of pain, both him and thee, and all the heavenly hosts of spirits that in our just pretenses, armed, fell with us from on high. From them I go this uncouth errand sole, and one for all myself exposed, with lonely steps, to tread the unfounded deep, and through the void immense, to search with wandering quest, a place foretold should be, and, by concurring signs, ere now created, vast and round, a place of bliss, in the purlieus of heaven, and therein place a race of upstart creatures, to supply perhaps our vacant room, though more removed, lest heaven, surcharged with potent multitude, might hap to move new broils. Be this, or aught than this, more secret now designed, I haste to know, and this once known, shall soon return, and bring you to this place where thou and death shall dwell at ease, and up and down unseen wing silently the buxom air, embalmed with odors. There ye shall be fed and filled immeasurably. All things shall be your prey. He ceased, for both seemed highly pleased, and death grinned, horrible, a ghastly smile, to hear his famine should be filled, and blessed his maw, destined to that good hour. No less rejoiced his mother bade, and thus bespake her sire. The key of this infernal pit by due, and by command of heaven's all-powerful king I keep. By him forbidden to unlock these adamantine gates. Against all force, death ready stands to interpose his dart, fearless to be o'ermatched by living might. But what owe I to his commands above, who hates me, and hath hither thrust me down into this gloom of Tartarus profound, to sit in hateful office here confined, inhabitant of heaven and heavenly born, here in perpetual agony and pain, with terrors and with clamors compassed round of mine own brood, that on my bowels feed. Thou art my Father, thou my author, thou my being gavest me. Whom should I obey but thee? Whom follow? Thou wilt bring me soon to that new world of light and bliss, among the gods who live at ease, where I shall reign at thy right hand, voluptuous, as beseems thy daughter and thy darling, without end. Thus saying, from her side the fatal key, sad instrument of all our woe, she took, and toward the gate, rolling her bestial train, forthwith the huge portcullis high up drew, which but herself not all the Stygian powers could once have moved. Then in the keyhole turns th' intricate wards, and every bolt and bar of massy iron or solid rock with ease unfastens. On a sudden, open, fly with impetuous recoil and jarring sound the infernal doors, and on their hinges great harsh thunder, that the lowest bottom shook of Erebus. She opened, but to shut excelled her power. The gates wide open stood, that with extended wings a bannered host under spread ensigns marching might pass through with horse and chariots ranked in loose array. So wide they stood, and like a furnace mouth, cast forth redounding smoke and ruddy flame. Before their eyes in sudden view appear the secrets of the hoary deep, a dark, illimitable ocean without bound and without dimension, where length, breadth, and height, and time and place are lost, where eldest night and chaos, ancestors of nature, hold eternal anarchy amidst the noise of endless wars, and by confusion stand. For hot, cold, moist, and dry, four champions fierce strive here for mastery, and to battle bring their embryon atoms. They around the flag of each his faction, in their several clans, light armed or heavy, sharp, smooth, swift, or slow, swarm populous, unnumbered as the sands of Barca or Cyrene's torrid soil, levied to side with warring winds and poise their lighter wings. To whom these most adhere, he rules a moment. Chaos umpire sits, and by decision more embroils the fray by which he resigns. Chaos umpire sits, and by decision more embroils the fray by which he reigns. Next him, high arbiter, chance governs all. Into this wild abyss, the womb of nature, and perhaps her grave, of neither sea, nor shore, nor air, nor fire, but all these in their pregnant causes mixed confusedly, and which thus must ever fight, unless the Almighty Maker them ordain, his dark materials to create more worlds. Into this wild abyss, the wary fiend stood on the brink of hell and looked a while, pondering his voyage. For no narrow frith he had to cross, nor was his ear less peeled with noises loud and ruinous, to compare great things with small, than when Bellona storms with all her battering engines bent to raise some capital city. Or less than if this frame of heaven were falling, and these elements in mutiny had from her axle torn the steadfast earth. At last, his sail-broad vans he spreads for flight, and in the surging smoke uplifted spurns the ground, thence many a league, as in a cloudy chair ascending rides audacious. But that seat soon failing, meets a vast vacuity. All unawares, fluttering his pennons vain, plumb down he drops 10,000 fathom deep. And to this hour down had been falling, had not by ill chance the strong rebuff of some tumultuous cloud, instinct with fire and nitre, hurried him as many miles aloft. That fury stayed quenched in a boggy Syrtis, neither sea nor good dry land. Nigh foundered on he fares, treading the crude consistence, half on foot, half flying, behooves him now both oar and sail. As when a griffin, through the wilderness with winged course or hill or moray dale, pursues Arimaspian, who by stealth had from his wakeful custody purloined the guarded gold, so eagerly the fiend, or bog, or steep, through straight, rough, dense, or rare, with head, hands, wings, or feet pursues his way, and swims or sinks, or wades, or creeps, or flies. At length, a universal hubbub, wild, of stunning sounds and voices all confused, borne through the hollow, dark assaults his ear with loudest vehemence. Thither he plies, undaunted to meet there whatever power or spirit of the nethermost abyss might in that noise reside. Of whom to ask which way the nearest coast of darkness lies, bordering on light. When straight behold the throne of chaos, and his dark pavilion spread wide on the wasteful deep. With him enthroned sat sable-vested night, eldest of things, the consort of his reign. And by them stood Orcus and Hades, and the dreaded name of Demigorgon. Rumor next, and chance, and tumult, and confusion, all embroiled, and discord with 1,000 various mouths. To whom Satan, turning boldly, thus: Ye powers and spirits of this nethermost abyss, chaos and ancient night, I come no spy, with purpose to explore, or to disturb the secrets of your realm, but by constraint, wandering this darksome desert, as my way lies through your spacious empire up to light, alone, and without guide, half lost, I seek what readiest path leads where your gloomy bounds confine with heaven. Or, if some other place from your dominion one, the ethereal king possesses lately, thither to arrive I travel this profound. Direct my course. Directed, no mean recompense it brings to your behoof. If I that region lost, all usurpation thence expelled, reduced to her original darkness and your sway, which is my present journey, and once more erect the standard there of ancient night. Yours be the advantage all, mine the revenge. Thus Satan, and him thus the anarch old, with faltering speech and visage incomposed, answered: I know thee, stranger, who thou art, that mighty leading angel who of late made head against heaven's king, though overthrown. I saw and heard, for such a numerous host fled not in silence through the frighted deep with ruin upon ruin, rout on rout, confusion worse confounded. And heaven gates poured out by millions her victorious bands pursuing. I upon my frontiers here kept residence. If all I can will serve, that little which is left so to defend, encroached on still through our intestine broils, weakening the scepter of old night. First hell, your dungeon stretching far and wide beneath. Now lately heaven and earth, another world hung o'er my realm, linked in a golden chain to that side heaven from whence your legions fell. If that way be your walk, you have not far. So much the nearer danger. Go and speed. Havoc and spoil and ruin are my gain. He ceased, And Satan stayed not to reply, but glad that now his sea should find a shore, with fresh alacrity and force renewed, springs upward like a pyramid of fire into the wild expanse, and through the shock of fighting elements on all sides round, environed, wins his way. Harder beset and more endangered than when Argo passed through Bosphorus betwixt the justling rocks, or when Ulysses on the larboard shunned Charybdis, and by the other whirlpool steered. So he with difficulty and labor hard moved on, with difficulty and labor he. But he once passed, soon after when man fell, strange alteration, sin and death amain following his track. Such was the will of heaven, paved after him a broad and beaten way over the dark abyss, whose boiling gulf tamely endured a bridge of wondrous length from hell continued, reaching the utmost orb of this frail world, by which the spirits perverse with easy intercourse pass to and fro to tempt or punish mortals, except whom God and good angels guard by special grace. But now at last the sacred influence of light appears, and from the walls of heaven shoots far into the bosom of dim night a glimmering dawn. Here nature first begins her farthest verge, and chaos to retire, as from her outmost works a broken foe with tumult less, and with less hostile din, that Satan with less toil, and now with ease, wafts on the calmer wave by dubious light, and like a weather-beaten vessel, holds gladly the port, though shrouds and tackle torn. Or in the emptier waste, resembling air, weighs his spread wings, at leisure to behold far off the imperial heaven, extended wide in circuit, undetermined square or round, with opal towers and battlements adorned of living sapphire, once his native seat. And fast by hanging in a golden chain this pendant world, in bigness as a star of smallest magnitude, close by the moon. Thither full fraught with mischievous revenge, accursed and in a cursed hour he hies. All right, book 2, done.